09S is located 930 km east of Port Louis, Mauritius, and has moved south-southeastward at 4 km per hour, 2 knots, over the past 6 hours. The weak steering pattern is anticipated to remain firmly in place through the next 36 hours, and 09S will continue to meander inside this pocket of weak steering through at least the next 36 hours. Categorization estimates forecasts are provided by JTWC. Wind speeds and categorizations may be different from those provided by local meteorological agencies. In 2 days, a major shortwave trough will move in from the west and combine forces with a building subtropical ridge to the northeast and eject 09S onto a southeastward track. After 2 days and through the remainder of the forecast, 09S will accelerate along the tight gradient between the subtropical ridge and the deepening trough, reaching track speeds approaching 55 km per hour, 30 knots, by the end of the forecast period. In terms of intensity, everything depends upon the vortex axisymmetrization process. The latest ship's guidance suggests a slight reduction in the deep layer shear, which could allow for the vortex to align vertically and the convection to sustain itself. However, this would be offset by a localized reduction in sea surface temperatures due to upwelling as the system remains quasi-stationary. In around 36 hours, the shear is expected to reach a minimum while poleward outflow begins to really ramp up as it taps into the divergent flow ahead of the approaching trough, allowing for a brief period of intensification up to 75 km per hour, 40 knots. In 3 days, shear picks up sharply, to at least 75 km per hour, 40 knots, and comes to dominate the outflow, and the system will be sheared apart. At this point, the race will be on to see which happens first, dissipation or extratropical transition, ETT. The current forecast calls for both to occur simultaneously in 4 days, but the system could dissipate well before this point, especially if it fails to organize in the near term. Deterministic track guidance is somewhat surprisingly, given the weak steering environment, in good agreement over the next 3 days. All of the guidance shows a track northward over the next 24 hours, turning east then southeast after 36 hours. Model spread increases to 222 km at 3 days, though a long track spread increases sharply after 2 days as the system accelerates poleward. By the end of the forecast, cross-track spread increases to a modest 315 km, but a long track spread increases to over 1,296 km. The uncertainty associated with the weak steering pattern, the extreme along track spread after 2 days, and the high uncertainty in whether or not the system even reaches the next 4 days, lends low confidence to the JTWC forecast track. Intensity guidance is mixed, with roughly an even split between models showing dissipation within the next 24 hours and those peaking the system near 95 km per hour, 50 knots, in 3 days. The consensus mean roughly splits the difference, and the JTWC forecast hedges to the consensus with low confidence. Maximum significant wave height is 5.5 meters, 18 feet. Information provided by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, JTWC.